Jan Boys back, welcome back to the channel. My name is Darren, also @Wolfskin over on Instagram. I'm a toy photographer from Wales, and in today's video we're going to be talking about ProMode on your mobile phone. Let's go. As the title suggests, today is all about shooting ProMode on your mobile phone. However, these camera basics will also transfer over to you if you've just started out using a proper camera as well. The first thing you're going to want to do is fire up your camera app and head over to its Pro section. I have an Android, I'm using a Huawei phone, and mine is in the bottom right hand corner of my phone. When I go in and have a look at the little dial, I've got things like photo, video, aperture mode, I've got slow-mo, I've got all these different things. You want to look for the one that says Pro. Now when you open the Pro section, you're going to be faced with a few different options that you might not be familiar with, and I'm going to talk you through them now one by one. Is that an ice cream truck? Shooting in Pro allows you access to RAW files over JPEG. Now JPEG is a file format that we've all known and used for years and years and years. The problem with JPEG, however, is that the file size is very small. There's a plus to this, it allows you to save lots of them on your phone. The downside to this is it doesn't hold a lot of information. And by that I mean, every time that you take a photo and it saves it in JPEG, what it has to do is compress that image. So it compresses it down to about 5 megabytes in size, and you kind of lose a lot of the information that was available in that photo. When you shoot in RAW format, instead of it being 5 megabytes, it's probably about 50 in size instead. It's uncompressed, unlike the JPEG, so it allows far more information to be held within that file. When you then import that to Lightroom, if for whatever reason the shot was slightly overexposed, underexposed, you want to change the highlights, the shadows, you want to come in and change the contrast, whatever it is about that photo, shooting in RAW allows you far more creative control over that process. The next thing we're going to talk about is white balance. White balance is exactly what you think it is. It is telling the camera what is meant to be white should actually be white. We've all done it where we've walked into a room and we've taken a photo of something and everything looks a bit too blue, a bit too yellow. The white in the photo, maybe a door, a piece of paper, whatever it may be, a t-shirt for example, isn't exactly white. This is because your phone is trying to compensate in different lighting situations and it doesn't always do a fantastic job of this. Now when you open up the settings for this, you're going to be faced with a few different things. A couple different icons at the bottom will be like direct sunlight, cloudy day, overcast, fluorescent light. These different settings basically just dial in the white balance for different scenes. If you hold up a white piece of paper in certain lighting conditions, it may not always show as white. This is a setting that you would need to dial for that, although purposely if you wanted to change the tone from a cool to a warm tone, and this is what you would do for that. Now we get on to the camera bread and butter. These are the three things that every single photographer needs to know in order to operate a camera properly in manual mode. So bear in mind first and foremost that a lot of the names for these comes from photography years gone by. Shutter speed essentially used to be a mechanical shutter that would open and close in front of the sensor on a camera. So the shutter speed would be a physical shutter that would allow light onto a sensor of a camera and then close again, blocking off the light, thus taking a photo. In today's digital world, we still use the name shutter speed, and for DSLRs, they still have a mechanical shutter inside and a prism and light and all of that stuff. But for a mobile phone, shutter speed is essentially how long it takes for you to take that photo. Now, a really high shutter speed will allow you to freeze frame action. You've all seen it where you've seen a pet run around a room and someone snapped a perfect shot of them, freeze frame in action. A high shutter speed allows you to do this. So if you know you're going to be shooting something really fast, like a moving vehicle, sports stuff, a pet, something like that, where you want to really freeze frame something quick happening, then upping your shutter speed is the way to go. Equally, for some things you may want to drop the shutter speed down and have a slower shutter speed. This enables you to do things like light painting. If you're shooting something like a waterfall, for example, then it will, instead of freeze framing the water, you get this kind of nice sort of smooth milky effect of the water coming over. There's a few different reasons why you would use one over the other. Now, because of those two settings, that also affects the amount of light that is allowed onto the sensor. If you have a very fast shutter speed, because you're trying to capture the details of a car as it flies by you, then obviously the shutter is only allowing light onto that sensor for a very quick amount of time. And because of that, one of the risks that you have is that your shot's being rather dark. This is where the next camera setting comes in, which is aperture. Aperture is commonly known these days as sort of bokeh, and basically it is the amount of light that is allowed into the lens. Now, having a wide open aperture allows more light in to the camera, so having a fast shutter speed with a also wide open aperture allows more light in for that quick shutter to happen. If you have a high aperture, then it's not allowing a lot of light in at all. Now, this is fantastic for longer exposure shots where you have the sensor open for longer, but the difference between the two is that with a low f-stop number, only the thing that you want in focus will be in focus. The thing that you point and focus on, everything else behind will all be blurred, that bokeh effect, the portrait mode that everyone knows these days. Now, the next camera setting is ISO. ISO is essentially fake light. It's light that isn't really there that we're boosting onto the photo. Plenty of people may have taken a shot in the dark where they've looked at the photo afterwards and gone, this is really grainy. And more often than not, it's because the ISO was boosted way too high and therefore introduces fake light, noise into the photo. Now, sometimes you can push the ISO in certain conditions. If it is low light, you might want to boost the ISO a little bit. Just be aware, the higher you go, the harder you push the sensor, the more chance there is of introducing noise. Now, the reason that these settings are so important is because they directly affect one another. For example, if I want to take a picture of a moving car where it's whizzing by the camera, then I'm going to want a really high shutter speed. Because of this, I'm probably going to want a relatively low aperture as well, just to kind of freeze frame that one thing. I want the focus to be on that item, on that car, rather than everything else going on around it. It'll also kind of give it that sort of blurry effect, like it's going really quick. Now, depending on what sort of lighting conditions that we're in, there might not be a lot of natural light. It might be a cloudy day, it might be getting close to nighttime, so you might want to try and boost the ISO as well. This is why these things directly go together and affect one another. Now, if you want to get into photography a little bit more seriously, I'm still a novice, I'm still learning these things, I'm still learning to look at things and sort of, figure this out for myself, which is why typically I allow myself a little bit of extra time these days when I'm taking a shot, just to kind of give myself some time to try out some of these different things. How would it look with a fast shutter speed? What would it look like with a slower one versus a higher aperture? All these things I try and change myself in order to sort of try and learn along the way. Because at the end of the day, I'm still a novice as well. So that's it for today. I wanted to go over a little bit of a camera basics video. From my last video, actually, someone posted in there that they didn't know that the ProMode even existed, and I'm sure this is quite a common thing. There's loads of things that you can do within that mode that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do with just the kind of normal run and gun auto mode on the camera. So give it a shot. Let me know in the comments down below if you have any questions or anything else. Otherwise, drop in, find me on Instagram most of the time, or over on Twitch, because I stream occasionally as well. That's it for today. See you next time.